Yeah, me
Um,
too.
GDM is hard. Yeah, I kind of found myself when I was a kid. Just my dad was an entrepreneur. He ran like a foundry. He built statues, fancy stuff. His dad was an architect. He built stuff. So I kind of have it in my bones to be an entrepreneur, but fell into kind of the professional go to market person. I worked in like marketing, innovation, and strategy for ConAgra. And like I've done it for big companies professionally, right? I would argue it's one of the most difficult things you can do when you're helping companies that go from kind of 0 to 1. I go like, dude, I've done 20 million to 100. That's not nearly as difficult as zero
Hmm.
to one.
Yeah.
So being able to talk to you is a special treat. So I appreciate it coming all the way from Germany and everything.
Thank you.
You just joined a new company.
I did. So Ninox. So I tell everyone it's Lovable. So if you've used Lovable for the front end websites, but we are for the back end. So if you want to build a CRM system, ERP, any kind of project management system, you can do that with low code as well.
That's an interesting spot to be right now, too. Because a lot of the stuff that goes right on the front end goes wrong on the back end, right? Like a lot of people don't realize, like, if you really want a smart LLM experience, getting the back end right is the trick, not the front end, right?
Exactly. The front is just the splash, right?
Right.
It's everything that goes in, yeah, in the systems. Absolutely.
What attracted you to that one? I mean, you've worked, I mean, I've seen you
Yeah.
consulted or done work with Amazon and GoDaddy and all types of stuff. What brought you to this one?
Yeah, I've scaled 7 companies so far. Let's see, 3 big tech, 4 scale-ups, 1 IPO, 1 unicorn.
You have the
And
scars
for
to prove it.
me, the battle scar is to prove it. And for me, it was taking something cool that actually works. And I
Yeah.
think that's the kicker, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Actually
yeah,
works.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and coming in to scale it. So a lot of the times, and I mean, this is with even other companies that I've consulted for, as an example, is founders think they have product market fit. And
Hmm.
then you have to be like the person that tells them that there's no Santa and saying like, actually, that product fit that you thought you had, you didn't. If you do founder-led sales and you get your first 20 clients and you think you have something and then you try to hand it off to your first account executive or sales rep,
Yeah.
that's usually the danger zone. That's
Yeah.
usually when they figure out that, they don't have product market fit.
That's
So,
really expensive and a difficult spot that a lot of people like. It becomes counter scalable, right? You end up having this problem. I've done this problem a little bit. I know that pain well. Where's my scars? I've got several of them here from from the same interaction. I would almost the challenging thing for me, and especially you're on a product where the stuff moves so quickly, especially right now. Like the whole space is tumultuous. Is it harder to find product market fit than it has been? I feel like it's harder to,
yeah,
especially if you're doing software stuff, because I'm like,
yeah,
expectations change at least
yes.
quarterly and maybe more than that.
I mean, more than that. And I think now with AI everything. So that's another discussion on what's AI and what's not AI. But in this era, products are built and deployed faster than ever. Features are deployed faster than ever. So founders and CEOs that think they have time, they don't. And literally a quarter, so 3 months can pass, and a competitor can completely absorb, your business as far as product and feature deployments. So you're going to see a lot of movement in the software space. There's a lot of talk right now. SaaS, what does that mean?
Sure.
Is it viable anymore? So a lot of these things are floating around, but yeah, you have to move faster than before.
So I'd saw Ali highlighted you for saying like most people think that they have a technology problem or an AI problem when in fact they ultimately kind of have a leadership problem. And you were saying like because of that, I mean, well, I don't even know if it was because of that. It was like kind of a separate mention. But she was going, yeah, that's why brand is largely going to win, right? So I believe you think of brand the same way I do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I go, people go logo, colors. I go, no. I go, you're trying to become a proper noun in someone's head. They want to think
Exactly.
you're not tissues, you're Kleenex. You're not a copy machine, you're Xerox. It's about giving them the same sensation and the same feeling, if you will, across delivery systems, across channels. If they see you on YouTube, if they hear you on a podcast, if they receive a handwritten letter, they all have this same kind of cohesive architecture to make it work. We agree on that? Is that fair?
100%. And I always say brand has always been the original revenue driver and it will continue to be the original revenue driver. And some of the speeches I give, I mean, I think these jobs might still be posted. You can go on, I think Miro was hiring a head of storytelling. And
Yeah.
this job, it was like New York, Amsterdam, London. They're paying very good money for this job. Also, another great company called Vanta, hiring a head of storytelling. So, this story, the feeling, when you see big companies really double down on this and put their money behind it, right?
Yeah.
That's when you know that it is a thing. So, yeah,
I
it's
mean,
everything.
it is crazy because I mean, I was trying to like figure out the logic behind that because this is a really, really old stat, but I remember being in business school and looking at someone that was trying to do the market value of Apple's brand and their market cap. And it was just a massive, massive proportion of the value of the company. And, they're just like, why would you pay for that? It's not defensible. I'm like, oh, it's completely IP. You're getting them like you save dollars on advertising, right? You're getting them to, well, someone said you make like 700 decisions by the time you leave for work in the morning, something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
70% of your sales funnel's done before it even hits a salesperson.
yeah,
And that is all branded marketing. So for those people that think, brand is fluffy, it doesn't have direct attribution, like,
yeah,
especially in the age that we're in now with AI tools, think about how many ads you get a day, whether
yeah,
it's LinkedIn, Google, like wherever you are. We're trained now, right? Our eyes are trained to skip over those ads. When you look at LinkedIn, people are bombarding stuff with AI generated, posts everywhere. And there's the almighty question in this year, how do you rank in the GPTs?
yeah,
So all of this is brand and content. And what I'll say, the other piece of this brand story, stop firing your content people. Like your content people are your unsung heroes.
yeah.
They are the ones that are going to differentiate you in this AI, everything gold rush that is happening right now. So very important.
It's hard to do because I mean, like with that in mind, you're talking about how do I consistently deliver a consistent experience where I mean, I've got kind of that challenge. I've been doing an AI product for 10-ish years, but continually have to evolve it because people have moving and changing expectations. And I'm like, how do I deliver? Like, I wanted to build a shop. And so, like, everybody we hired and stuff, I would deliberately go, like, you can be from wherever, I don't care. But, like, we are a data driven shop. Like, we are, hey, take the emotion out of it, show me the data. In God we trust, all others bring data. And I go, we wanted to be that shop because when it really comes down to it and people have like money on the line, real enterprises, like for those listening and stuff like that, there's startups and there's many, many times in business where you have to just make a decision. But most of the time when you're at those big companies, you get fired for doing that. And if you have to make those decisions regularly, you need a backup. And that's why consultants kind of exist because you go like, look, I may not know if I'm right, but I did my homework. And if I did my homework, at least you don't fire me because at least I tried. It's the people that don't do that get shown the door. Trying to find that when we're simultaneously like saturated in more data, but simultaneously it's such new data. Man, it's one of those where I'm going like, wow, where do I get the, hey, here's your benchmark. I'm like, the whole product field that you're asking about is less than 6 months old. And a lot of it's fake.
Exactly. A, a lot of the old thinking is going to go out the window, right, over the next few years. And a lot of this mentality of let's wait a year, 2 years and analyze the data and, data paralysis. The market forces will correct this kind of thinking for us because we're really moving in cycles of 3 to 6 months versus the 1 to 2 year cycles that we were in before. And you're just not going to have enough time. And I think when we talk about this is the fourth, I'll call it fourth evolution. So the previous one was industrial revolution. Now this is the fourth technological age. It's going to move at such a speed that leaders are just going to have to start making decisions. And this is where I say the critical thinking becomes important, the ability to challenge, right, preconceived notions and having the experience of saying, okay, this is right. Or sometimes you could say this feels right or feels wrong. And I know that data driven people hate that word feel, but at the same time, you have to use your experience. And I just feel really bad for the junior team members, coming into the workforce who don't have the ability to gain that experience right now. So there's a whole issue happening there.
Don't tell anybody. But we were trying to want to do experiments. I think like one of the bigger, niftier things that you can do in business now is basically use the product as the marketing and go see if you can deploy your product as the marketing and the advertising campaign. Look what you can do with this type of stuff, build in public kind of stuff. And I don't know about you. I ask a lot of people this, but I'm like, have you used AI to a point yet where you've actually seen it do something better than you yet?
Sure.
Like, yeah. So like I
Yes.
talk to people who are like, no, 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 I'm safe. I'm like, you're not.
No, we're not.
No, you're not safe. You're not even close to safe. There will be a day, if you haven't already, where you are going to see and go, holy crap, like it is not limited by time. So even if it did my job on an average basis, it could do 10 times as much for most people. And so I went, okay, cool. Laying in bed one night going, holy crap, my job is just as automatable as anything else I can think of, right? I do have principles that tell me generally how I make decisions and what information I use. So I went, well, everyone else on my team is the same way. And I do think a lot of people are naive when they just like fire their staff and just like, cool, then what? So your just product stagnates. That's never worked for anyone in SaaS ever, ever, ever. So less so now. You need to focus on people that know how to build and know how to build really quickly. And so let's jump into that and try to go, okay, cool. Everybody, we're going to try to automate our current jobs out of the process. And in 1 month, we're going to be a different company. And I don't mean reposition or anything, but I go automate what you have, work yourself out of a job. And I had to be very careful with how I frame that because obviously everyone got nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I went, no, a month from now, you're going to be thinking about, no, my job is to think a year ahead and to be
Exactly.
deploying the next year. And one, we did that. We did get like, hey, we produced, I think, 3 times as much as we did the month prior, and then did that again. And then we got weak and we forgot to double check the KPIs and we found new KPIs for throughput and other things. And all of a sudden, we didn't notice that like 400 PRs went through that weren't actually even PRs, where it resolved incidents, but didn't actually close the GitHub issues. Where I went, like, we saw these metrics, our charts and everything were filled out, the throughput looked good, all the notifications and everything worked. And a big part of them were just actually not actually deploying into like QA and prod environments. And again, luckily, because we had taken care of the bug queues and everything, we were working on like next week, next month features stuff. So it wasn't things that anybody missed. They were just things that they never saw. But I immediately went, holy crap. The amount of, I mean, I felt like it took 4 steps back, just going like, I didn't even know that could happen. Everybody else listening, heads up. You'll get into
Yeah,
it.
it can happen. Those
You're
hallucinations, like it can
incredibly proud
absolutely
of yourself.
happen.
And then all of a sudden, work disappears and things like that. That was one of those wake up calls where I was going, that is my weak brain because it's a lot funner. Working on that stuff is like you see I hate to call it vibe coding because that almost implies like it's off the cuff and it isn't, but it is much more kind of productive and it is much more kind of critical thinking. What am I building if I'm not restricted by time and I can see that feature deployed almost instantly? But we very much got lost in the fray, and I realized one of our weaknesses was basically just going, oh, that stuff must still be running just fine, right?
Yeah,
Like,
critical thinking. I always say it's like Google Maps. So I grew up in the age before Google Maps existed, and you have to know like where you were going,
yeah, you
and
are bad.
right. And nowadays with Google Maps, it's like you can't do down the street, turn right, turn left, and people just rely on it. And I feel like AI tools are going to be the same to a certain degree. And for our generation, I feel like we have enough experience to really gut check the results that we're getting and
Yeah,
utilize that. But I'm really worried about Gen Z, Gen Alpha, right, coming up. What if you came up through the education system and AI was all you had? Like, how do you learn even how to critically think? People are not even in schools nowadays, they're not using their hands to write. So, I mean,
it's a
there's the
muscle memory thing, right? It connects the neurons from your
exactly,
memory and everything else. You want to speak it, you want to write it. I mean, there's a reason they
and they're
have
not
the
doing
say the
it.
word, spell the word, say the word. Then you want to
Mhm.
write, even typing and things. They say keyboards actually had some of the same effect, right? There was your hand makes a specific pattern. The keystroke from the keyboard apparently doesn't have the same effect. So people got a little bit dumber from keyboards too.
Yeah,
And
it's going to be interesting. And then when you see one AI agent talk to another AI agent, and I think I
mhm.
saw it on social media somewhere, and I don't know if it's called gibberish or whatever their language is, but literally, it's just like they realize it's an agent, and then and they're just talking to each other. It's going to get to an interesting world. I think the tipping point will be when Elon Musk perfects this Neuralink connection
Really,
between the brain and the computer. So if the brain can think it and the computer can just understand it, I think that's the tipping point. And that's when all of those episodes of Black Mirror, I think, start to become true.
Go look it up if you haven't seen it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
um, those are getting there, aren't they? I mean, I've seen videos recently where like they have people, quadriplegics that are playing video games and stuff like that with them now, where they're going like
Yeah.
sophisticated, full on like grade A, Call of Duty level type stuff, snap judgment thinking. Are you getting in line for one of those? I've wanted one of those since I was a kid. I remember being at church with my family, being very bored. And I had this vision of these like glasses that went behind my eyelids that would allow me to see a video game on the back side of my eyelids, my little
They're
hand.
doing it with glasses now.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing that. It's going to be quite interesting. I'm actually very excited for what AI advancements will do for healthcare.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that. I think will fundamentally increase longevity for people. The diagnostics will become phenomenal. Like I'm very excited for that. I'm not excited, for the lapse of our critical thinking, our critical judgment. And I think history tells us, regardless of what it is, unfortunately, the human species does not have a very good track record with these things. Usually it gets worse before it gets better. It'll get worse, and then people are like, oh, here's the guardrails, and then they'll pull back and self correct. So I'm hoping that that process goes faster. Um,
What do you
yeah.
do? Like, how do you keep that in mind? So I'm very much with you. The most useful class I took in college was on fallacies. It was like just how to recognize flawed thinking. I think literally one of the most useful things I think you could teach anyone. And I'm raising kids right now and doing the same kind of algebra. And like, what do we do? I prank them a lot. I don't want them to even trust me. So I go, I want you to be like on your toes at any given time, young man, because stuff looks really good and it can be really, really bad. But like when you have leaders and stuff, how do you implement, like, call it the culture? How do you basically build and flex that muscle that is keeping a critical eye on things? What does that look like in the work environment?
What I always tell leaders, and especially founders and CEOs, is it's the ability to be self aware and the ability to get your ego out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so difficult. And it's usually the people who are not self aware, right, that cannot get their ego out of the way. So it's kind of chicken and egg. Um, but if you work on yourself as a person and understand where you're strong and where you're not, and to really be okay with that. So, an example of this, I'm in Germany, and in the German culture, they do not like to admit a mistake. They don't like it, and they don't want to be the one that's blamed, and this whole blame thing, they can't handle it. Where in the States, we're just like, I messed it up. Okay, like, yeah, let's go next. But there's really a difference in the culture. The effect that that has is a lot of, I'll say, German founders and CEOs, but also expand that to the rest of Europe. They don't like to take risks, right? And the same risks, and they don't like to second question anything. And
Mm.
so it's very different in the startup scale up world. It's changing just because I think, again, market forces, everything that's happening. But startup culture was built on risk, right? So you have to be able, to do it. But I'm saying this just because the cultural aspect plays such a major factor that it's something that we cannot overlook. It's a real distinguisher.
Well, just so you know, that was extremely useful. That helps me. I've got some people in this company and stuff like that, and I've found the same thing. I've got people from all over the world and stuff, and I've very much noticed because I've tried to do that. Or I go, look, if our competitors have a better product than us, I'll send them a resume. I just want to be on the team that wins. So I don't care if my idea is right. I really would prefer that the right answer is under this quote unquote roof, my team having come up with it. But I could care less if it's me. And I think I agree. I've taught my kids that ego is the enemy. I just go, look, admit the mistake, acknowledge it, and move on. Because that's what the smartest people do, not the dumbest, right? Like you can't learn from a mistake you didn't make, right? So, and you still made it, whether or not you acknowledge it. These are my own observations, self-observations at the moment. Is that we're becoming so dependent. People are starting to treat AI like a utility, where they're starting to say, like, yeah, it's becoming a knowledge base, like the electricity in your house, and having it on means that you're experiencing something that you can't experience with it turned off. And you notice the difference, and I definitely do, right? Between like automated routines and different models, but simultaneously, I'm also feeling myself needing to go quote unquote off grid, not necessarily unplug in the sense, but actually being able to be agnostic and have low switching costs associated with it. building our own in-house tools and spending actually much more time than I expected on just, again, like one I want to put through now is just like, okay, cool. Apparently we need our own dashboards for tracking GitHub commits and other things because other comments that came even directly out of the agents weren't trustworthy. Like they very often will go like, oh yeah, I did that. You go check. You didn't do that. Oh, sorry, man. Didn't do that. Didn't notice. And that level of governance, I've noticed it's popping up around. But a lot of people are starting to talk about the levels of governance that's associated with their work, which I go, cool. I mean, especially products like yours. I think that's actually potentially a very, very powerful one. Like CRMs and stuff are really interesting and they're simultaneously highly, the
Highly
customization.
sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do a lot with CRMs, and I don't know that I've ever seen one deployed, quote unquote, standard that apparently.
Yeah, no, never happens.
And when you see, like, there's a lot of those, right? Klaviyo and HubSpot and stuff, like you see their market caps go shrinking dramatically. And I think that's probably a significant reason of why it's like you can build your own simultaneously. Man, the amount of like in-house data points, API endpoints, and other things is going to be like company by company, but still need to be
I feel
transferable.
sorry for Squarespace and Wix right now. I mean, with Lovable coming onto the scene, I just, and I've used Lovable myself, and I'm like, it is so easy. We
Yeah.
actually had for International Women's Day, Lovable did a campaign where basically she builds, and so they set up these hackathons basically in every major city across the world, and they gave everyone access for free, and everyone was building, and I'm like, this is so easy.
Yeah.
So easy. So, yes, back to your original question, that time frame, that window of opportunity, it is short. And founders and CEOs are going to have to learn how to pivot very, very fast.
Well, how?
Well, I'll tell you something else. I was at an investor meetup the other day, and this was for pre-seed, seed, and Series A. And they were saying that now, for these stages, they do not want to invest in companies that have more than 5 people.
Ooh, it's happening.
It's happening,
I
yeah.
had someone critique us about a month ago for being a quote unquote small shop. And I went, your being a big shop isn't an asset. Not anymore. No. Like, welcome to 5 years ago. Absolutely not.
Hmm. Yeah.
That makes me happy that someone actually noticed that.
Yeah. So you get like a lot of Series A companies that, and this is back, a few years ago, they would be anywhere from 50 to 100 people.
mm-hmm.
Series A, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the solution was just add more people. And we're like, no, not anymore. And so I think, a lot of these companies, they're cutting the staff by half. And then now, I mean, if you're building, think I saw it. Okay, I saw this on TikTok, so
Fair
but
enough.
take it with a grain of salt. But they claimed that the first $1 billion AI company of one person was done.
Yeah.
And of course, guess what it was? Drop shipping. And I'm just like, yeah, of
Yeah.
course it was. but hey, someone figured out how to do it. Good
mm-hmm.
for them.
Yeah. Um, you could argue the open claw,
Hmm.
right? With the kind of how do you kind of orchestrate multiple AI agents and kind of scale the autonomy? That one. That was really interesting, not because it was, well, interesting, obviously, just because the autonomy and stuff kind of takes things to another level of kind of scale, both in making mistakes and achieving productivity. But simultaneously, it was like the future. Like, I remember years ago, this is like 8 years ago, we were trying to hypothesize what would happen from an AI boom. And one of the things we kind of predicted were like, okay, middle management gets wiped out just because most middle management is the people that report to me, hand me a series of data points. I make a decision, and then I do the same thing for my boss, who does the same thing for usually the executive tier. And I was going, okay, so middle management will get wiped out. The organization will be flattened dramatically. And now you're kind of seeing this. I think it was Tamaz. I'm going to mispronounce his name. Tamaz. He's a VC. Really smart guy, though. Go look him up. But he was going, hey, we kind of hypothesized that each person is going to have about 7 agents. And you're going to have, so like, you're going to have companies that still have like largely the same productivity, but there's probably going to be 7 agent direct reports to each person. And then there's probably going to be a handful of people with minimally overlapping roles that kind of orchestrate those. But now you have the productivity of a 100, 200 person company. And I mean, I guess, what's your take? Do we see, what the long tail is? You ever heard the Chris Anderson premise, right? Do we see a bunch of hyper specialized companies? So I mean, I presume just because a lot of LLMs work on popular information, right? Most of their decisions are based in
Yeah.
popularity.
Yeah.
Where you see a ton of small solopreneur type of organizations, maybe have large impact, but very, 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 very highly specialized, or do we just churn through almost like the adoption curve? Someone establishes something and they get faster and somehow deploy better. Because I go, there's an operational play and then there's a positioning play
Yeah.
there.
So here's what's going to happen. So you're already starting to see this in the accounting firms, the consulting firms, I'll call it entry level, junior to mid level tier. It's leaving. Like they're not even hiring junior level staff anymore. So that's its own problem. Like you said, mid level, a lot of these roles can be taken by AI. So the new org chart, and I just gave a talk for what Amazon, Techstars, Founder Bootcamp told them exactly the same thing. Hire 2 to 3 super, super, super senior specialized people. People that know what they're doing, people that have the critical thinking skills, the experience, all of that to manage these agents. That is literally, and instead of the new org chart, I said digital leaders. So this is the other pivot. I would say up until about 2 to 3 years ago, when you wanted to scale revenue, they just brought in the traditional sales guys, right? And they would say, add more staff, SDRs, BDRs, et cetera, add more. That
Yeah.
is over.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's the rise of the digital leaders because the digital leaders know how to generate pipeline. They know how to convert pipeline. They know how to sell it digitally. They can do the brand. They can do the optimizations. So it's all the rise of the digital leaders. And you get very senior digital leaders on the top managing agents. They can do everything. I mean, we even here in Berlin, we have companies which they are literally getting rid of not all, 90% of the salespeople because the agents can do it all for you. And then you only need the very, very top salespeople to close the very complex deals. And the other thing I'll say is getting on the phone with an actual human, that is going to become the new luxury.
I agree. You can tell. And man, is it, I don't know, a lot of people don't know this. They have like voice agents out there. I'm like, just a heads up, the more knowledge that they're tied to, the more latency you get. So the
Yeah.
slower and the more annoying it is. So again, for now, you still want a human on the
Yeah,
other
of
end of
course.
that, right?
Duolingo, Klarna. I think they learned those lessons. But yeah,
You had me thinking about a team member that I need to talk to today, doing a lot of that digital leadership and stuff like that. Um, Again, like right in the thick of it, because a big part of just the the headache that's so exhausting for me is just as soon as I feel like I've kind of figured it out, the more it changed. So again, I mean, I brought up, I'm like, hey, I think I figured out a 5 year plan, and people laugh at me, like, yeah, good luck with that. And I go, no, I get it. I know that, like, I get that no one really knows what this world looks like in 5, 10 years from now. Wholeheartedly agree. But that being said, like as an example, oh, this is what it was. Go to market. Right now, that is like a deploy your product in market. It's product market fit, it's early adopters and going through adoption curves and positioning and stuff like that. But simultaneously, the amount of companies and transition and the complexity of that transition, like the amount of go to market specialists that probably should or need to pivot into basically just helping companies adopt their AI in not a non stupid way, is at least 5 years worth of work, regardless of how fast the technology proceeds. Right? I was going like, there's a large category there.
huge category. I mean, it's one of the things that I've been doing, working with founders and CEOs to help them implement the best of AI go to market tools and the best of human experience together. And it's interesting. A lot of founders and CEOs, they're like, okay, we've heard of these AI tools and most of them use ChatGPT or Claude, but it kind of stops there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then they're
yeah.
like, okay,
Same.
how do we really do the rest of it? And so there's a lot of open questions. And one of the other things I say is a tool, it doesn't matter if it's a regular tool, an AI tool. A tool is not a strategy, right? And I think that's something that the listeners, please understand that. It's not a strategy, and a tool is also not a leadership plan, and it is not an HR plan.
Yeah. Who do you look to when you're looking for the people that kind of drive strategy? Who sits in those positions that you follow? Like, who are you watching that goes, hey, I think that they've kind of figured this out? Who are the thought leaders that are kind of the ones to watch as far as that kind of logic and technique goes?
It's changing. It's changing, and it's changing quite rapidly. It used to be Leaders at HubSpot. I follow Victor Rappardelli of Synthesia quite a lot. I like what he's doing, out of London. For founder branding, I follow Amelia. It's two sisters, the company called Ivy. They were on Dragon's Den, like masterclass in founder branding. I say it's changing because a lot of what I would call the traditional theorists and strategists, they're not at the head of the curve anymore. They're still trying to substantiate the legacy model, especially in go to market. I would call that legacy model hire traditional, sales leader, pump with AEs and BDRs, SDRs, and then if you have a problem scaling, add more people.
Yeah.
That's just not the thing anymore. And the transition now is, how do you take the best of digital, because that's really what it is, and scale with that? So I start to look at actually up and coming companies and founders and operators of these up and coming companies. So this is actually the important thing to really be looking at. And I think you're going to see a divide happen over the next 5 years. So think of like a HubSpot or a Salesforce. Fantastic companies, but how many people does this companies employ? A ridiculous amount. Do you really need that many people to run that company? No. And if you had to rebuild it from the ground up today with AI tools, you would probably cut that workforce down by 80% at least.
Yeah. Yeah. People quote that number where they're like, yeah, we think there's a displacement of about 40% of white collar workers. I'm like, it's higher than that. It's higher than that.
Did you see the Anthropic CEO? I mean, I preach about this. I mean, that guy, he gave an interview a few months back with Anderson Cooper on CNN. So, for all the listeners, just go to YouTube on your phone, type in Anthropic CEO CNN. And he gave an astounding interview, national television. And he said the unemployment wave is coming. Now, I think he quoted somewhere between 20 to 30%, but I think he was being conservative, right? He's on national telly. But if you have the CEO of one of the biggest AI companies in the world, and he's going on national news to say this, I mean, you can only assume that the problem's even bigger than what it is.
And it's harder to figure out, right? You have a lot of, about the same time they had the MIT studies where they're going 95% of companies haven't figured out how to do ROI. And you dig into that study and you find out most of them just they didn't bother to benchmark.
Yeah. Well, the market forces over the next few years are going to self correct that out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we're going to get into a stage. It used to be 5 years ago that you could sit on your hands and try to pay catch up. And that's just not happening anymore. I mean, you look at the companies which are doing well now. So Synthesia, NAN, Clay, like these companies, a couple of years ago, nobody ever heard of.
Yeah.
Right. And then now these are the companies that are rising. So this shift, I think, is something that people have never seen before, except I will say in the 90s with the dot com bubble.
Yeah.
So, everything was dot com and then it consolidated. I do think there will be a consolidation. I think that will absolutely happen. A lot of the AI tools, like AI agents, that's great. But how many AI agents do you need? And I think you're going to see the Googles and the Claudes and the whatever of the world, consolidate down.
Yeah. Do you think they're safe?
It's so impossible to predict.
Yeah.
I think, I'm an American based in Europe now, and I see a lot of the European countries. I think France is a really big one for this. Like they're taking everything off of Microsoft. Like they're really making sure, like proprietary data centers, etc. So you have this regulatory issues at play. Just from a pure tech thing, very difficult to say. I think Google has a chance. I really do. With Gemini, Nano Banana, I mean, if you've used it, it's amazing what that tool can do. Even look at 25 versus 26 now. In 2025, ChatGPT, it was, everything.
Yeah.
And now in 2026, it's Claude. It's like ChatGPT doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just think at the pace of these tools. So I have no idea what 2027 is going to bring.
How's the European business environment versus the US? I mean, you've been there a while, right?
Yeah, I've been here a while. I just wrote an article for the Next Web about this. It's called basically The Revenue Gap, and the subtitle is What EU Founders Are Afraid to Risk and US Founders Are Afraid to Question. And it goes to the heart of this because you have the cultural piece, which is at play. And so everybody thinks, oh, it's the tech, it's this, that's the language. No, the one insight that I learned is all those things are legitimate, but they're superfluous to the core problem, which is the cultural dynamic. The cultural dynamic is the one thing that will make or break your company swim or sink. And this is one of the things that I found in a lot of European, I would say, political systems, tech leaders, investment firms. They're like, why can't Europe compete to the level of the US, China, India, whichever market? The cultural risk factor. Great cultures here in Europe, but this risk aversion,
Yeah.
the risk aversion piece is a killer.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard the argument being made in the US, and this is like from conservative right wing stuff, but they're like, right now we have an East Coast focus towards Europe, and they're like, we should actually focus the strategic thinking of even the United States over to California and the Pacific Rim, where
Yeah.
they're going like, we need to shift that direction. That's where the decisions are being made. And I worry about Europe on that. I studied regional business Europe and did study abroads for Europe in my business schools, kind of trades and things like that. Went to business school in a communist officers training headquarters that had been
Gosh. Oh
converted.
my
It's
gosh.
awesome.
What I
But
can say there, though, is like, America, Europe, great. But I
yeah,
think both continents are missing the boat. The real gem is Asia, so China, India, like the BRICS nations coming up, the whole continent of Africa. Like when you want to talk about where the future is, that is the future, right? And I think people are sometimes we get so involved with where we are and what's happening that we have our heads in the sand and we don't think about the future. So I always tell friends, like, if you have kids and they're growing up, make sure they learn Mandarin. They're going to need it. So,
awesome. I love it. I would say I hugely appreciate you. Angeley Mullins on LinkedIn. Where else can people
yeah.
find you? I know you've got Substack. What else
Yeah.
you got?
So I've got a Substack. I just opened up my GitHub. So Claude Skills, I just put a pitch deck evaluator in there. It's absolutely astonishing. You can go to my website, angeleymullins.org, and you can see everything there from AI tools, different articles, everything that I do.
Beautifully done,
Um,
by the way.
Thank
Really
you.
tastefully done.
Thank you. Lovable. There you go.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you, Angeley.
Yeah.
And we will
Thank
talk to you
you.
soon.